Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we got some stories to cover, people. And we're going to get really into the weeds. Speaking of weeds, we're going to get into AOC and her nonsense and some other people who were interviewed. And it's going to be fun to kind of like show you guys some of the stuff. On top of that, the almighty Trump has been indicted and it's going to be on. Nothing's going to be the same after this. We're going to have to do some serious digging into this whole thing. But speaking of a media circus, Dylan Mulvaney has stepped in it again, and unfortunately, we're going to have to wipe this dog doo-doo, the situation dog doo-doo off, and thankfully we have some people who are going to show us the way. As well as we got some more stories about in the wake of the trans shooter, and in the wake of a lot of other like cultural matters. And here in Canada, doesn't get any better. Jody Gondek shows us how not to answer a question from a legitimate news source. And also, we talk about our illustrious local pastor who, once again, is being railroaded by the system. All of that and so much more today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
Alrighty. So once again, we are back for another Tuesday News Day.
Bring it back, bro.
Yep. No, I contemplated doing something by myself on Tuesday, but I did not want to do a live stream by myself, and I didn't want to.
Thursday?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thursday. I didn't want to do a live stream by myself, and nobody was really kind of like super excited about having like a round table or anything like that, and I'm just like, oh well.
You see,
and like I had already said that I was kind of like I don't really want to do it, and then I was like, oh, Trump got indicted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kind of a big story.
Yeah.
You see, Stephen, you have this like weird idea that being bold and outspoken is not an unusual trait. When I'm like, no, it is an unusual trait. People do not like to be exposed and be put on the spot like you and I. We are a unique breed of people. This is why we do this stuff.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Yeah. That is true.
When will you finally realize that I'm just always right? Come on, man. You just got to go with it, Just give me the credit I deserve and we can all move on our merry way. That's the way it is, man.
I think we're going to have to change your like show nickname from Senior Sweetness to Senior Prideful.
Yeah, and we're going to have to change your show nickname to Never Goes Along with It, kind of like
That's right.
I have tried like so hard to teach you how to do the rules of improv. The rule number one of improv is always go with it.
Yes,
never like never say
that is
no.
how you go along with it. If your aim is solely comedy.
Which is part of what we do. We're not a serious newscast. We're not like official like news. We talk about serious topics, but sometimes we do commentary. Sometimes we get into humor. You do voices. Give me a break. You do voices.
Most of my voices that I do are during satire segments, though.
Yes, but you also do them during some other like when you read other sections.
Well,
you are
only when I read the voices
louder
of like
Crowder, bro. You're basically louder of a Crowder, okay? You are. You love doing the voices. Give me a break.
Not nearly as much as I like doing the voices for D&D.
We're serious
podcast. For the most part, we are.
Yeah, your theatrics are always like in there. I mean, we are a serious podcast, but like you mischaracterize us into like purely serious news. I'm like, come on, like we add it's commentary. So we add some humor into it as well.
Yeah. Well, after Danny has seriously wounded me, before we jump into the stories of the week, Danny, quickly, how was your weekend?
Well, I'm surprised that Stephen is now a snowflake. I didn't realize that was a thing here. It's like seriously wounded me. My goodness. Good, man. Good. I got a chance to
just going to cut Danny's feed.
What?
I was just like joking. I'm like, I'm just gonna cut Danny's feed.
My feed's good.
Because I have the power.
See? Yeah, see, he's tyrannical. That's why he doesn't like to admit that he's humorous.
I will not be questioned.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Trudeau. senior here. Weekend was good. I got a chance to play some fun sports with my friends. We played volleyball. I don't know if you ever played volleyball before.
I've heard of it. Haven't played it.
It's fun. It's volleyball with walls. So you basically get to bounce the ball off the walls like at your opponents, and it is stinking hard to hit a ball off the wall. It is very tricky.
Okay.
But it adds a whole new element to the game, which I really enjoyed, actually. That was good times. Yeah.
Yep.
Very good times.
Yep.
And then tomorrow I get to go and deliver the presents to the little ladies. My adopted nieces that I got like a whole bunch of today, which is why I was late today. But it's gonna be good. Got a lot of good stuff. That's right. It's gonna be fun. What about you?
Yep. Well, the weekend was pretty normal, and then yesterday I was like, all right, Alberta has changed its regulations, and now I can get my non-GDL license. This is a good day. Show up to the registries. 35 people in line in front of me, and I'm like, crap. And I'm like, but it's the only registries in like a 20-minute radius. So I'm just like, screw it. It won't be worth my time to go somewhere else. And so stay in line, get to the front of the line. And lady's like, oh, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, all I want to do is just like swap my GDL to a non-GDL. She's like, oh, that's easy. I can do that. So I go over there. And she's like, well, you have a ticket to pay off. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I had a ticket. And so she's like, well, while I get that printed off, you can fill out this like driver's abstract form. I'm like, all right, no problem. Sorting that out, filling it in, pay off the ticket. And then she looks at me and she's like, seems as though you're ineligible. I'm like, what? She's like, oh yeah, like that ticket you just paid off, it had demerits associated with it. I'm like, okay.
Steven, that means you're not worthy.
I'm like, not worthy. But I haven't had a ticket in like 8 years. She's like, yeah, but it only counts if it's within the last 12 months. And then whenever you have demerits, then it's 12 months from whenever you got those demerits. And I'm like, so like December, January, when they finally like were applied to my license? And she's like, yep, you can come back and like January 2024. And I'm like, great. Wow. I'm like, well, that sucks. And so I was telling my coworkers, because we were all doing it the same day. And so it was just like, the one guy's like, oh yeah, like I only got my license a couple years ago. Like not even 2 years ago. So I'm not ready yet. Another kid who's 18 is just like, I got it. And we're all like, okay, whatever, man. So I was not super pleased yesterday, and I was like, cost me an arm and a leg to pay the ticket, and then on top of that, I didn't even leave it with a new license.
Yep.
So now I'm like in this messaging war with the province, and I'm like, can I get it this way?
Steven's gonna be extra salty today, people.
A little bit.
Brace yourselves.
I will try and contain myself, but now we must jump into the stories and other things.
It is going to be like, like a tearjerker, like how much salt is going to be in there. It's going to be like,
before we begin, let us begin with the prayer of shrewdness.
Almighty prayer.
Almighty prayer of shrewdness.
The shroud.
Yeah.
Release the shroud, Stephen.
Release the shroud. Keep thinking of the Shroud of Turin, and I'm like, nope.
I know. That's what makes it so funny. Continue, right, sir.
Anyways, the prayer of shrewdness. Our most merciful and just Father in heaven, we pray over the words we are about to speak. May we be your mouthpieces this day. Use us to silence. Use us to speak the truth fearlessly. Guide us that we may speak wisely. But as we have been shown mercy, let us also offer love and peace, even to those who curse and abhor us, that we may be instruments of your love in our growing ever darker world. Amen.
You know, it'd be really fun.
Yep.
If you read that in a Martin Luther King voice, that'd be so much fun. Let's keep that in mind for next time, because I would totally be into that.
Martin Luther King voice.
Oh, mercy me, our most merciful and just Father in heaven. Right, that would be an epic voice to do it in. So keep it in mind for next time.
I could do it
because I would totally get into that, and that wouldn't necessarily take away from the actual the purpose of it, but it would almost make it for just I would enjoy it more. It would be fun. I'd really enjoy it.
You would enjoy
I'm
it.
sure I would so be like, testify, brother, testify. Let's get into it.
Yep. Dan,
Be a good way to launch.
Yes, let us all. I'm hoping that everybody who watches comments smite him.
And you wonder why they call him Salty, like Salty Steve.
Smite.
His response to everything, smite him.
Smite
He's
him.
basically the male version of the Queen of Hearts from like Alice in Wonderland.
Off with his head.
Off with his head.
Smite.
Smite him. Smite.
Yeah. Anyways, so before we jump in, there is a funny little story from Fleckus Talks.
No, we are jumping in.
And this
We're
guy
jumping
was
in the levity.
into the levity. Yes.
Yes.
So just watch. I'm gonna scroll
Just
back to
watch?
the beginning.
You're not even going to introduce the whole thing. Okay, we're just gonna
Well,
go cold.
it doesn't require any introduction because it's
Well, it does. You have to tell them what the context is. So this was the guy on the street interviewing people about
whether they would say the N-word to solve world hunger.
There you go. See, it's not so hard.
They introduce it for them.
You're welcome.
You ever wonder why sometimes...
Would you say the N-word to end world hunger?
Would I say no? I don't know. To end it? Oh gosh. No. If I had a poll and everybody came together and gave me permission. That's it. The community would have to come together because
Oh boy.
I think hungry people would definitely give you permission.
No, it can't be the hungry people. It's got to be the people who will be affected by the word.
Would you say the N-word to...
Can't be the hungry people.
Yeah. Did you ever see the episode of Survivor where they split the groups into the guy camp and the girl camp? Did you ever see those episodes?
Yeah.
And they're impressive, right? Because like as much as like it's funny, it also is incredibly like instructive on what actually happens when you have guys together and girls together. One of the things that I found when I saw that episode, the girls camp, is that the girls would refuse to do anything unless they all talked about it and they all made a consensus. And they all have to agree. And so they never got anything done. Like I don't mean that as a negative. I'm like there's something about girls that they basically have to agree, and everyone has to agree on the course of action. That's what that girl was doing. She was like, well, I do it, but I'd have to have everyone's approval first before I would do it. It's like right there. That is the kind of attitude that gets you in trouble.
It is indeed.
If it's going to save lives.
If we save but one life,
answer
then
is
it's all worth it.
Oh yeah, the ultimate the ultimate talking point that they never ever use in any other context. Gosh.
Any other context.
But speaking of the queen of double standards, let's talk about ALC, Steven.
I'm done with that. Let's talk about ALC. So this is a small video from Libs of TikTok. So breaking, I served AOC with an ethics complaint after she lied about me in a committee hearing. AOC wasn't in her office, but then I bumped into her. She was leaving the Capitol. Watch what happens. It's super entertaining.
Super transphobic, and I never want to share space with you. Thank you.
I am here.
Thank you.
Really? You're going to load now?
Inside the Cannon building. I was here last week because I attempted to ask AOC why she lied about me in a committee hearing. She cowered away. She refused to talk to me. So I'm back here today, 1 week later, and I'm going to deliver her an ethics complaint that I filed for lying about an American citizen in a committee hearing.
So AOC, she broke the rules. Believe it or not, there's actually rules on Capitol Hill. And 23 Clause 1 is the big one. You got to act in a way that reflects credibility on the House. And lying about, a U.S. citizen certainly doesn't do that. So we're filing this ethics complaint.
Let's go inside and see if she's there.
How are you doing? Just dropping off some mail for the conversation.
Hi. So basically a few weeks ago, AOC lied about me in a committee hearing. So I tried to come last week and talk to her, but she kind of cowered away, wasn't interested in talking to me. So together with Mike from the Heritage Foundation Oversight, he helped me file this ethics complaint. So we filed that. And if you can give it to AOC, I would really appreciate it. And tell her to stop lying about American citizens. Okay.
Thank you.
I just dropped off an ethics complaint at AOC's office, and unfortunately she wasn't there. So we left, and then I was walking through the Capitol, and guess who I bumped into? AOC herself. I just delivered an ethics complaint to your office because you lied about me in a committee hearing.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, so
I never
you're
inspired about
No, you're actually super transphobic, and I never want to share space with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back and you have been served.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
That was an epic
Epic troll.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of troll that's effective because it shows the hypocrisy, like of these leaders, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that whole scenario is that people have speculated over whether or not AOC really believes what she says,
Yeah.
or if she's literally just handed it by people who basically tell her this is what you're going to do, this is what you have to, how you do it, and all that kind of stuff. If she's handled, essentially, that's the question: is AOC handled, or does she actually believe the stuff?
The things that she says.
Yeah, the things that she says sometimes seem ridiculous, but she has the confidence to say them because she knows that the people, the insiders, the people with a lot of power to do this, that they're never going to hold.
They're
her
never going to
accountable.
hold her. Yeah.
Right. So this is this is a good feeling kind of moment, which I'm really happy about. However, now, well, you may have that whole conversation about whether or not AOC is handled or not. This is an interesting kind of thing that happened this week. You may have missed it. I would have missed it if a few people hadn't pointed it out.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting scenario that happened. And now this falls into the speculation because it's difficult to prove something like this. But I watched and I did a bit of digging on
There's certainly a possibility.
There's a very strong possibility that this may be the case. We don't have definitive proof, but it sounds like a strong case of very plausible kind of situation, because not only is this the kind of thing that you can see AOC doing, because a lot of celebrities and government figures, they can't say what they really think on their official accounts, but they'll make a burner account so that they can actually say what they want to people that that mock them or criticize them. And so people believe that AOC may have been caught using a burner account this past week, and here's the story about that.
So PJ Media, move over Pierre Delecto, who was
Do you know who that is?
It was the burner account for
Mitt Romney. Praising Mitt Romney for being so great at being Mitt Romney.
Looks as if AOC has a burner account, and it's a doozy.
Mm-hmm.
Burner account kids, an anonymous account that a person, often public figure, uses in order to have the freedom to say things the public figure in question wouldn't dare say if they could be attributed to him or her. Of course, them is Mitt Romney's Pierre Delecto. Now, however, AOC has been unmasked as the, likely or potential operator of burner
Allegedly.
account. Yeah.
Allegedly, let's go say that.
That gives old Pierre a run for his money. AOC has apparently even used it to wish death threats on at least one person. What? You thought leftists were as sweet, loving, and tolerant as they claim to be? The account Zaza Smoka, Zaza Demon, has now been deleted, but screenshots abound and there's evidence aplenty that it was AOC's. Mm-hmm. First, the first name Zaza can be short from Alexander or, of course, Alexandria.
I could actually confirm that because I've met Latinos who go by Zaza.
But that's not what tied the account to AOC. The congresswoman did that herself by replying as AOC on the Zaza Demon account, forgetting to switch back to her main. On April 1st, AOC defended her crudeness as Chaya Raichik, which we just watched, that is Libs of TikTok, by tweeting, NYC doesn't play with bigots and transphobes, and neither do I. Another Twitter user responded by attacking AOC from the left, but you vote to send money to Nazis and to fund the Israeli apartheid. But hey, at least you stood up to a TikTok star. To that, AOC responded, but from the Zaza Demon account, lol, and what makes you think I did anything to support Nazis? You're delusional, seek help, whoops.
Yeah, see, I think that okay, so here's one of the plausible parts of this. If that is let's say for example you are AOC and you're using a burner account, but you switch back and forth, you may forget that, oh wait, I'm using this as a I'm trying to pretend I'm not AOC, but if you're not thinking about it, you may slip and say a comment without thinking in the first person, which is what she did. And many of these accounts is she basically the person who posted this stuff from Zaza Demon basically always referred to themselves in the first person. which is odd if it's not her, if it's somebody else that's posting this stuff, which I thought was really interesting. So, anyways, go on.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to look at like timestamps because it's like 2 days between things that happened. So, like, it's a really interesting occurrence. When another criticized her for interactions you didn't even recognize when you took a photo with her, LMAO. Zaza Demon replied, "Is that supposed to mean anything besides how forgettable and basic libs of TikTok is? She's a worthless C. Your language is as charming as it is compelling, Congresswoman." Worst of all was when Matt Walsh tweeted this on March 28th. "I came to the conclusion years ago that the trans movement is the greatest evil our country faces. I only became more and more sure of this fact with each passing day, and more determined to oppose it until my last breath. That was too much for Zaza Demon, who replied, "You're a hateful little freak, and I cannot wait until you piss off a trans person that actually is as unhinged as you claim to say they all are. Can't be a bigot if you're no longer breathing." As wishing... Yeah.
It's a big deal. That's a big deal because while it may be humorous, if she's actually making like actual threats, or at least saying things that are that over the line, she could actually be held to some serious
this would be this would it would be
that would
difficult
almost
to say
be
whether
like
it go under the
violence.
frame of it could be incitement, because it's like, I can't wait until somebody kills you because they're as unhinged as you claim to say they are.
Yeah.
So it's like,
there's a reason why she wouldn't say that stuff on her main account.
Yeah.
Because she knows that kind of language can actually get her in a lot of hot water. So if anybody wants, I'd recommend go to YouTube or Rumble, wherever it is, and look up the quartering. Jeremy from the quartering did a full breakdown on all of the stuff from various different sources and angles, and he does a pretty good breakdown. That's where I watched it originally. I was like, this is interesting. I thought it was interesting because you get to see what these people are really like. So a lot of people, they like AOC. They're like, oh, she's great. But like you saw in that video with Chaya Rychek, she says something really, really harsh. She's like, "You're a transphobe, and I want that. I will never stand next to you." And immediately after she says that, she's like, "Okay, bye." Like there's an element of like really, really harsh narcissism, arrogance, and almost like a vindictiveness that when somebody does, and so it's like Mean Girls. If you ever seen Mean Girls, that kind of thing. They say horrible things, but then they couch them in this flowery language that makes it seem like they're not as horrible as they are. Like it's like almost like they say horrible things to you with a smile. That's basically AOC.
Yep.
And so just watch for that. The people. I think the main thing I would take away from this whole thing is what Matt Walsh said. He said that they're the most evil people. I would say more than that. I'd say that these are the most dangerous people, because people who have absolutely no limitations and they know that they're going to be protected,
they will face no consequences.
They will face no consequences. Are the most dangerous people.
Yeah.
The people who are completely and totally without any limitations are the most dangerous.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful, because there are people, and we're going to talk about stories later on that covers that. But keep that in mind. AOC is one of these people. If she had no limitations on her power and could do whatever she wants, you better believe that she would do some very horrible things to a lot of people. And she's part of the swamp. And speaking of the swamp, last week we had a massive nuclear bomb in the world of politics. Former President Donald Trump has been indicted by a New York grand jury. So we're going to basically launch into that and talk about how this is a Pandora's box. We're not going to be able to close it, and the implications of this action are going to completely change the course of American politics from this point on. You cannot go back after doing this.
Okay. Trump back in Florida after a historic court date in New York. So president's court date arraignment was an unprecedented moment in American history on Tuesday afternoon. Former President Donald Trump appeared in a New York federal courtroom and would face 34 felony charges stemming from alleged hush money payments he made on his behalf to an adult film star during the 2016 election. First time a U.S. president has been charged with a criminal in a criminal matter.
Mhm.
Trump's attorney has said the former president's legal team is expected to file a motion to dismiss the case. Below is an archived live blog of news updates surrounding Trump's court appearance on Tuesday. So Monday, his plane touched down in Palm Beach International Airport. Oh, this is in like reverse.
Oh, so we're going backwards?
Yeah, I don't know why they listed in that. It's kind of weird.
You almost have to go down to like.
So it's like the most. So, like Monday night, I gave a brief wave as he entered Trump Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, won't be able to see exactly what happens because a judge decided late last night not to allow cameras because of the media frenzy that it would cause. 9 a.m., Alvin Bragg arrived in the courtroom. Governor Mike DeWine at 10 a.m. speaking Tuesday on former President Trump's criminal charges said no one can be happy to see an ex-president of the United States indicted. 11:30, Marjorie Taylor Greene showed her support for the former president at a rally near the courthouse. Greene thanked patriotic Trump supporters, calling Republicans the party of peace, while calling Democrats the party of violence.
Mm-hmm.
She was escorted away by police moments after arriving. Supporters gathered Tuesday morning. Anti-Trump protesters later joined carrying a large banner that read, "Trump lies all the time." Okay. There was also an incident between her and Jamal Bowman. And it was mostly just Jamal Bowman like screaming at the top of his lungs. It's like, why don't you care about climate change? Why don't you care about like gun violence in schools? Why are you here protesting this? This is such a small thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, no, this is a pretty big thing. So former President Trump is expected to leave Trump Tower at 1 p.m. to surrender at the courthouse. Not expected to make a public address following his court appearance, a member of Trump's legal team told News Nation.
Mm-hmm.
Former Florida state lawmaker, who drove to New York for Trump's Tuesday arraignment, pledged his continued support for the former president. It's a bad day for America, one of the worst days in American history, said Anthony Sabatini, chair of Florida's Lake County Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
1:10 p.m., President Trump has departed Trump Tower for the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. 1:25.
I think they're just giving us a bit of the timeline.
Yeah.
But here, why don't you go here? Do this. Why don't you go to the parts of the pictures, and we can you can scroll through the pictures as we go as we talk about the story. There's like pictures of Trump. There's also pictures of like the actual like people at the Trump arraignment, like like lower down and all that. And we can like you can scroll because like there's some interesting pictures there that you can see what's happening. Go down south. Go down, boy, down. No, not there. Like little more. Keep going. Down. You'll see the dots on the bottom. Keep going. There you go. All right. So, couple of things like So what do I think about what happened with the Trump arraignment? So, a couple of things come to mind immediately. Number one, there's a reason why this has never happened before. Okay. Actually, before I get into that, this has never happened before in American history. What I mean by that is that no president has been arrested after they left office by the administration in power. One of the great examples is Richard Nixon.
Yep.
Richard Nixon left in disgrace after the Watergate scandal, and I think that the president that came out, I think it was Gerald Ford. He pardoned him. And so he basically got rid of the need to go after him so they could all move on. So there's a reason why this is significant. It's because whenever a country starts persecuting or starts targeting their political enemies or opponents, that's when a country really starts going downhill, because it basically means that you're not seeking justice, you're seeking political weaponization of the justice system. And this is the kind of stuff that you see in countries like, for example, like Ukraine. Ukraine, President Zelensky has basically banned and persecuted his political opponents using the courts as the weapon. That's the kind of stuff that you want to be careful of. And that has a big impact on America's view on the world stage. America, when they do this, which they are, America is no longer seen as the arbiter of like the best example of freedom and of the rule of law and order in the world. Okay, so that's the first major implication. The second implication is that what they're doing has every hallmark of a political hit job, like totally trumped up charges with one purpose only. I remember watching the Timcast IRL this past week, and they were talking about it, and they had an actual like legitimate left wing kind of guy who was on there, and he had this very interesting take, which I think is very common among a lot of left wing people that are like on the reasonable side of things. He said, like, well, we need to judge the whole arraignment and the whole thing based on the merits of the case. He's like, oh, it's all about the merits, all about the merits. And as I was listening to that, I remember thinking, what he's doing is dishonest, because what he's doing, he's looking at it like it's in a vacuum. If you see it in a vacuum and you don't know the details of who it is or what's going on and all that, sure, you have to be like, okay, well, I'm sure if they're guilty, that's fine and all that. But this is not a political vacuum. Alvin Bragg is incredibly political. He's demonstrably, completely and totally politically motivated. He intentionally does not prosecute people who are like little like dangerous criminals, and then he goes out of his way to create a completely unheard of legal theory that basically turns a misdemeanor charge that's already expired into a crime. Now, the reason why they're going through him through New York and through the state is because if they went through him federally with this charge, then Trump could just basically pardon himself if he becomes president. But because it's a state charge and they want to like charge him by from the state of New York, then he can't do that. And they want to bleed him dry. They want to like force him to spend millions and millions of dollars on a court case like this. And they want to basically make him look like he is like, a criminal, which is basically what the media does. The media are smear merchants. They're going to run with this. They're going to take this and they're going to be like, you see, he's a criminal. You see, he's a criminal. So it's a political hatchet job. Altogether, it demonstrates that the people who are on the inside, the powerful people in the political world of the United States, are willing to do whatever it takes. They're by any means necessary to completely punish their political rivals. And this is like now set an incredibly dangerous precedent for the country, because now anybody can be basically brought up and brought up on fake, made up, totally unrealistic charges. And by the way, the entire court case against Trump in New York, it is weak, and it is so weak that even left-wing, very hard left-wing people and lawyers and experts in legal theory are looking at this and saying, this is like the worst case. This is like literally a weak, super weak case. The fact that they're even going forward with it seems to be ridiculous. And the fact that it's happening in New York seems to be almost by design, because let's face it, you cannot have an unbiased jury in New York. Trump is likely not going to have a fair trial in New York. Steve, tell us your thoughts about what happened.
Yeah, like I'm on board with what you've been saying. Like, okay, the fact that they can do this to Trump means that they can do this to anybody. Like we know here in Canada, and we'll go into that later, that you can be a political prisoner as long as somebody in the higher up positions decrees it. But in the United States, it's always been thought that there are supposed to be checks and balances to the power of government. And unfortunately, especially in the state of New York, we've been proven wrong that there are very few checks and balances, and that if you have a power-hungry DA with political ambitions, then he can go out and he can kind of jug up some old charges that are misdemeanors and that are long past the statute of limitations. And then he can kind of rig up some other ones that go in line with it, so that it can be, there's 34 felony counts. And it's like, well, most of these are really insignificant. Nobody's ever gone to prison for one of these. But he's like, well, but all of them together, maybe.
Oh, let's just throw everything against the wall, see what sticks.
See
right?
if what sticks. And that's not how you're supposed to do a criminal investigation. That's not how you're supposed to do a criminal trial.
Okay. Now,
But-
tell us about a little bit about what you know about like what you think the political implications of this is. So that's the criminal implications, the legal implications. What do you think the political implications? Because this is obviously going to be seen as a political interference against their chief political rival.
Yeah.
What are the political implications?
Well, it depends how the Republicans respond. Because if the Republicans do gain power in 2024, then they could respond in either two ways. They could go the typical Republican route and be like, and I'll have a comedic voice.
Oh, he's doing it.
I'll go and do a Mitch McConnell voice.
That's a tough one to do.
Well, not that difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Well, no, it's more like...
Okay, go for it. Go ahead. Take it away.
I was like, well, if we do this, then the Democrats, they'll just be incited to go further. So we can't do this. This would be unsightly for Republicans, and it would cast a bad shadow on our party as a whole. And the MAGA brand Republicans cannot lead our party. We must have decency and rule with honor and respect for our fellow delegates in this House and in the Senate.
All hail King of the Rhinos.
King of the Rhinos.
Got the biggest horn that knows.
That's one way the Republicans, because that's how the Republicans traditionally have responded to inappropriate conduct and inappropriate behavior from the Democrats, which has happened often in the past. Is the Democrats will take power in some way, they'll take some unprecedented action, and the Republicans were like, well, we can't do that. Like, that would be a misuse of power. And it's like, well, let's be honest now. They've taken a misuse of power, and they've done it over and over and over again. And the Republicans need to stand up, and they need to say, within the bounds of the law, we are going to show you that there is a consequence to breaking it. And we can't charge you in a criminal court, but we can say, well, there are elements of your party, say Biden and Hillary, that have clearly done some criminal acts and criminal behavior in the past. And so, like, if you can bring up charges from 2016, then heck yes. We'll bring up charges from 20 years ago too. And all of this it's going to be a tit for tat. And I think that all of this, like, unfortunately, I think because they've done this, the Republicans need to do a tit for tat. I just hate that it's devolved to this.
It's basically like, you know, the leftists, particularly the far left wing in the Democratic Party, they're willing to fight dirty, and that's the problem. They're willing to fight dirty, and the Republicans are not willing to stand up. The Republicans are like you know, well, I'm sure they didn't mean it. You know, like, oh, maybe like Ian Crossland from like Timcast is the best example of like how not to deal with this. Like, oh, we just need to like amnesty everyone, and we just got to talk nice to people, and then we can, like, you know, create unity. I'm like, you can't create unity with people who are not fighting fair, who are willing to cheat and lie and throw mud in your face and mud in your eyes in order to win. That they're a win at all costs.
Well, because it's a pacifist response. Like, I remember we were having this discussion with I think it's my second cousin, and she was, I don't know if she still is, but back in 2016, we were having this discussion because she was a notorious pacifist in the family. And then we started talking, we're like, okay, like, as a pacifist, how would you respond to Nazi Germany and their expansion throughout Europe? Like, would you just kind of say, oh, we have to value our pacifist principles? And she's like, well, I value nonviolence, and that it's including that situation. It's like, so you'd be okay with having Nazi Germany take over the world because you are a pacifist and you seek nonviolence? And she's like, well, yes. Like, nonviolence is the way to achieve all end goals. And I'm like, no, it's not. We have, like, there are certain instances when we have to say pacifism and non-aggression is no longer an option. Yeah. There has to be a time when force is met with force.
Well, you know, if you're a good person, you're not willing to let bad people run amok,
to let innocent people suffer.
Exactly. Yeah. Now here's the final thing I'll say about the whole thing. In the short term, it's probably going to be a massive, like, you know, gain for Trump, because it's like a lot of people are suggesting, and I think they're right, that Trump is going to probably, unless some major
crazy
change happens,
shift happens. Yeah.
it's probably going to win the Republican nomination right now. This is going to galvanize Trump supporters. It's going to get people off the fence and to support Trump. And even if DeSantis finally announces, which he's taking a sweet darn time.
Now his support is, unfortunately, his support at this point is low because he was put into a rock and hard place.
Yeah,
he was left with either three options. Either A, go super soft lib and be like, Trump is my rival. Yes, I'll hand him to you, Alvin Bragg, on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Or he could do the middle route, which he went, and he's like, well, I'm writing on a campaign of protecting law and order and respecting the rule of law. It's like, well, if the rule of law, if they've gone through the quote unquote proper channels and are charging him with a felony through the rule of law and law and order, then if I am to be positioned as the law and order president, then I cannot oppose this action. I just say that I think this is a politically, basically just make comments on the side, but you can't actively oppose it. Or you could go the Rambo mode.
Yeah,
the Rambo mode, and then be like, you're gonna take Trump over my dead body, and it's like, well, that would be you'd basically be neck and neck in terms of the Republican leadership race, because people are like, dang, DeSantis is just crushing it, and then but when it came to outside of Florida, it'd be like, well, he's willing to use his power as governor to interfere in other states.
Yeah,
and to basically neglect the laws that have been passed and the indictments and the judge rulings and the court rulings that have been passed in other states. And so, how can he claim himself to be a law and order president?
Yeah,
it was a hard situation, but I don't think at this point Ron DeSantis is unfortunately not going to be coming back. Even though I really like the guy. Yeah,
I like the guy too. I don't think he has this. I don't think he's the guy. I just generally don't. I think he's shown that he makes a lot of moves based on politics, not based on he doesn't show the signs for me of a really diehard strong leader who does what is right whether or not it's popular or not, which I think is necessary. But anyways, long story short, I think it sounds like Trump is going to win the nomination, but it sounds like this potentially could hurt him going forward into the general election if he goes direct against Biden or whoever it is that the Democrats dig up and run. Here's the problem. Here's the ultimate problem I see. If we if we talk about the 2020 bake sale, that's our secret word, the 2020 bake sale. Thank you, Stephen. It seems like if you're a reasonable person, you cannot deny that there are shenanigans. I personally don't believe that whole thing was on the up. I just don't.
No.
I think there's way too much crap that happened. Now, getting a complete and total proof package would be difficult, but I just don't believe that it basically proved Democrats and their allies are willing, because the mantra is by any means necessary, and it doesn't matter. You can run over a field of puppies if it means you're going to win. That's their mantra. It's win at all costs, right? If they were willing to do that in 2020, you better believe they're going to be willing to do that in 2024. And this is part of that, because they want to basically tell show the people hey, look at the Trump is a terrible, horrible human being. He was arrested. How can he be a good person? If you actually were a reasonable person, a critical thinker, and actually examined Trump and Biden, both compared and contrasted their statements, compared and contrasted their actions and their behavior equally and fairly, it's not even close. Biden is nowhere near a reasonable or a good person. He's just portrayed that way by the media, who has a vested interest in making him seem like the old Uncle Joe. But he's really a horrible person.
Yep, he is. And
then Trump is not. But unfortunately, most of the general public and people in the regular world, I know people like this. All they need is one or two people in their circle of friends and maybe one media source from a biased left-wing media, and that's all they need. And they're like, well, it's proof right there. Because I run into people like this in my own life that they're like, oh, what do you think about Danielle Smith? Oh, she's horrible. I'm like, what makes you say that? It's like, well, she did this horrible thing. I'm like, what was that horrible thing? Well, she said this thing. I'm like, do you actually know the context of that? Well, yeah, it's CBC said something. Yeah, CBC didn't portray that properly and all that. Well, I'm sure she's guilty about her stuff. I'm like, well, okay, well, whatever. This is the way, and they know that. They know that they can manipulate the public sentiment very easily. So, long story short, Trump, this is going to probably like really help him short term. Long term, we'll see what happens in the general. But it's they've opened the Pandora's box. It's going to be basically we're back to the Wild West. Now it's like anyone's game. We talk about the idea of like, no one's above the law. Well, it's backwards. Like no one, like the law should never be used as a weapon. It's meant to be a protection. But the Democrats have weaponized it, and they've weaponized it all over the country. And so we're into brand new territory where the law is now a weapon used against people for political and for personal, like, hatchet jobs. It's a brand new world. So we'll see what happens going forward. Let's move on, Stephen.
Well, we're already going to see what happens to Bud Light going forward.
Yeah,
that is, people are going to do things to their cans. So Bud Light says pact with trans activist Dylan Mulvaney helps authentically connect with audiences. Anheuser-Busch created commemorative can specifically for its brand influencer Mulvaney. Anheuser-Busch defended transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney, appearing to be used as a Bud Light spokesperson after the beer maker celebrated 365 days of girlhood, saying the pact helps authentically connect with audiences. The trans activist retweeted Saturday that the beer company sent packs of Bud Light featuring the influencer's face as a way to celebrate the full year of girlhood that Mulvaney recently reached.
Do they have the video, Stephen, of Mulvaney talking about like the whole thing? Because there's a video of him,
I know,
like talking about it. Maybe you can find it on Twitter. Maybe look it up while I'm checking it out. Okay,
yeah, sure.
So one quick thing about this, while Stephen looks it up, is think about this logically. Think about this really just like critical thinking. Okay, who is the target audience of Bud Light? It is not women. Women don't drink like if you really think about it, women don't drink like just regular beer. Yes, women drink beer, but primarily, and this is true across the board. I know so many women, they drink wine, they drink cocktails, they drink maybe fancier drinks. Just like I know far too many men that drink whiskey, like hard, the fancy whiskeys, and beer. Those are very favorable drinks for guys. And on top of that, look it up on Twitter. You're never going to find it on
YouTube. It's just endless reactions to it.
No, you have to do Twitter. I found Twitter is the only place where you can actually get the actual videos of things. You can't find it on YouTube anymore. It's all commentary. Anyways, so the target audience is men, primarily just like, and this is primarily low income, just regular run of the mill, like blue collar worker men. Okay, that's their target audience, particularly Bud Light, which is a cheaper
that should
beer.
Probably be it.
Okay? And that's their target audience.
Thing called March Madness.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here it is.
Imagine that that's their target audience, and you think men. You're showing men a man who is posing as a woman, and that is going to sell beer.
Yep.
No, what's really happening is that they're hoping that they can get away with this. They can ride out the wave, not get a lot of backlash, and they'll be like, okay, we're clear. Because remember, they're being pushed by ESG, which is basically social credit for corporations, to get their score up. They have to get a nice score, and the best way to get that score up is by putting stuff like this out. This is what they've done.
Investments from the really big banks.
Exactly. This is what they have to do in order to do it, but nobody likes this stuff. Here's what they basically backed up.
Hi. Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month I
cause
celebrated
to
my
celebrate.
day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya!
Ugh.
Ugh. What are your thoughts on that, Steven?
Well, yeah, this is just Bud Light pandering, and like, yes, this will have an effect on the majority of their audience. The majority of their audience is just like, why would we
They're
want
gonna
to
be
support
pissed off.
this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really, like, when I have beer, I don't drink Bud Light, but usually I'll have ciders that I prefer instead of beer.
Yes.
But I don't know anybody who'll just be like, yes, I go to a bar and I'll order Bud Light. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Why?
As a marketing campaign, this is just nonsense. I mean, there was marketing campaign. Remember they had a marketing campaign for Coca-Cola where they put the names of like actual people's names. People went out of their way to get those.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they'd have marketing campaigns for like, I don't know, football players or people that legitimately are people that like that target audience would actually like. This is not for the target audience. This is like, no man is gonna want to look. It's gonna go out and be like, "Oh, I have to get the collector Dylan Mulvaney collector
Dylan Mulvaney can.
No, because who are the Dylan Mulvaney? They are like the single white, like, liberal women, because that's a voting bloc. That's a major voting bloc in the States. They're the ones who support this, and the LGBT community and their allies. They're the big ones. Those two blocks do not drink Bud Light. I can guarantee you they are not Bud Light drinkers. They drink different things, not Bud Light. So this is completely and totally shoving it in your face and being like you better like it or else. And that's what it is.
Yep.
And also, like, how insulting is it? Like that he's dressed up like no woman dresses like that. Like, at all.
Not well, yeah. Most women do not dress up like that.
Not in that context.
And then, yeah, nobody dresses like that to drink beer.
And especially for March Madness. But also, like, that he pretends that, like, oh, it's like
it's something
hectic
related
month.
to sports.
Yes. Like, that is insulting to women. It basically,
exceptionally.
He is basically trying to he, like, the joke, he's trying to, like, pretend to do the dumb blonde trope, right? Oh, I'm dumb and I don't know what, like, March Madness is, but I'm sure it's a reason to celebrate. I'm like, wait, what? Like, are you basically implying that women are dumb and, like, completely, like, like, I don't know, like their bobblehead kind of, like, little dolls? It really is super insulting to women. Really, I mean, I'm shocked that more women are not insulted by this person.
Well, they can't, like, any public persona of a woman. Like, the only public persona of women that actually are offended by this are conservatives, because anyone that's even in the middle that comes out against someone like Dylan Mulvaney, they're afraid of what will happen to them because they know what happened to people like J.K. Rowling.
Yes. No.
And so that's why it's basically left to people that are on the right, conservatives, people like Kid Rock,
yes,
who responded to this whole thing with a very interesting response. Kid Rock shoots up cases of Bud Light, responds to Dylan Mulvaney. Deal F. Anheuser-Busch. So here you go. I'm just going to warn you. NSFW, baby.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today.
Why is it doing this on Twitter?
Say something to all you and be as clear and concise as possible.
And with a gun, which is even better. That a machine gun?
It's an MP5 submachine gun.
Wow.
And fuck Anheuser-Busch. Have a drink.
I hadn't seen that video. I didn't actually know you had a submachine gun.
Yeah, no.
Or something. Yeah, whatever. But that's so cool. Way to go, man. There was a video. Wait. Did you see? There was a video of a guy, like, after the whole debacle with Gillette, and they're like, like the man like thing, the commercial that they came up with. I forget what it was called, but there was a guy who actually created a video, and somebody told me, like, you have to watch this. I'm like, okay, cool. And It was long. It was like 20 minutes. And I'm like, what the heck is this guy doing? He basically like found a bowling ball and he went through all this trouble to basically like fuse the bowling ball on top of a bat. Then he painted it with a big happy face on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, where's this going? And then finally he goes outside, takes all his Gillette products, and he literally smashes them with that bowling ball bat.
hammer?
And I'm like, yes! I was like, that was so worth it. That was worth it. Because I'm like, it was like, no, I'm not. It's not enough to just take a baseball bat. He has to go out of his way
to build something
and do
special.
a massive project because that is how much he hated Gillette from that on. That is the proper response. You don't just like shrug your shoulders and be like, whatever, move on. You have to expose and you have to say no. You have to be strong in the face of this because remember, their goal is one goal only. They want to demoralize you. They want to make you be so jaded that you don't care and you let them just walk all over you. They want to turn you into doormats and be like, whatever. Like let them walk all over you. That's what they want. Don't let them do that because that is their goal. They want to flood the market, and they are. They're flooding the market with nonstop, in your face. This is the way. This is the way. This is the way. This is the way. Until you're basically like overwhelmed, and you're just like, oh, well, what can I do? Like, there's nothing I can do. Don't do that. That's the goal. That's Marxist style struggle sessions.
Danny,
Okay?
don't
That's
you
what they're doing.
realize
What?
this is the way?
This is the way. Mandalorian reference.
Mandalorian.
All right, let's take it up.
I'm
What's back,
actually,
man?
just as a side note, I am quite
Oh, yeah.
enjoying season 3. It's quite good.
It's not bad, eh? I'm actually really, yeah. I'm
The
enjoying
latest
it.
episode, I was like, this is actually a really fun episode.
Mhm.
And I had like put off. I was like, I don't want to watch each episode weekly, so I'm basically just like having a small binge episode like every like 4 to 5 weeks.
Okay.
Because I'm not like, when's the next one? When's the next one? I'm just like,
You like the
binge,
Netflix.
binge,
you don't like
binge.
you like the Netflix approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just all at once. Give it to me all, baby.
Well, not all at once, because then it's just like I have to spend the entire week like all of my spare time.
Yeah. I did it when I was in my sister's house. I binge watched Stranger Things.
Yeah.
It took forever. I was a
Yeah.
long series, but
All
yeah.
right. So,
Anyways.
video. MSNBC Talking Head says guns are our new Moloch.
Mm-hmm. What's
So-
a Moloch's head, Steven?
What is a Moloch?
I know what it is. I'm just
I know
for
I know
the
what it
audience.
is. Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
Moloch is the what is that? The Assyrian?
no. All right. So for those who don't know,
I-
Moloch.
I know it's like the god of death,
Yeah,
but I
he's
just forget
basically
which
the-
culture it is.
He's the god of the Ammonites. Okay, so what the Moloch is back in the ancient Near East, in the time of Israel, way back before the Babylonian invasion, Israel was practicing a kind of religion that incorporated a god that required child sacrifices. And by the way, Moloch was just the most recognizable of the cultists, but every major god of that time, from Baal to Astarte, they all also required child sacrifices. This is just the most famous example. Moloch was a god that was represented by a statue, a giant statue with the head of a bull and in the body of a man, and that statue would have an oven built into the stomach, and they would superheat that oven, and this statue was made of bronze, and then its arms would be sticking out in front of you, and they would get red hot with the heat. And what they would do, the priests would basically take the children that were offered to Moloch. They would put them on the arms of this bronze beast, and then they would basically be fried alive.
Yep.
And they had music and drums playing at the time that they were doing this,
hide
because
the
they wanted to
screams.
drown out the screams, but also because it's part of the ritual and all that. And once a child dies from basically being like burned to death,
Yeah.
then they would take the child and they'd throw it into the actual fire in the stomach, and that would be passing your children through the fire. It's basically what it was. Child sacrifice.
Yep.
Okay. So keep that in mind, because this video, by the way, the people that are up there, the two talking heads next to Joy Reid, these are a prime example of what is now popular in our society, which are people who are claiming to be representatives for Christianity, but in actuality are the best example of completely and totally false teachers.
Yep.
And that's what this video is kind of pointing out. So you need to kind of put that up.
You know who? Fox's hate entertainment broadcaster Tucker Carlson of the I Hate Trump Passionately group text and lies about Dominion joined in.
The trans movement is the mirror image of Christianity and therefore its natural enemy. The trans movement is targeting Christians, including with violence. Most Christian leaders in this country don't want to admit that. Admitting it might force them to take deeply unfashionable positions.
Joining me now is Jim Wallace, founding director of the Center on Faith and Justice at Georgetown University, and Charlotte Clymer, transgender activist and former press secretary for the Human Rights Campaign. Thank you both for being here. It's great to be with you. I'm going to start with you, Charlotte. There are statistics that show that violence against transgender people was already high. 2.5 times more likely to be victims of violence than cisgender people. From 2017 to 2021, the number of trans people murdered more than doubled. 73% have been killed with a gun. And yet, we're now seeing the moral panic over trans folks shifted onto this Nashville massacre.
That's right. It seems that Republican Party, as usual, just can't seem to do basic math. Since January 1st, 2016, there have been 3,580 mass shootings in the United States based on the Gun Violence Archive. Less than 5 of those have been trans. So we're saying that 99.7% at least of the mass shooters have not been transgender. So if we're going to ban someone, maybe we should ban people who are not transgender from owning weapons, if that's the logic. But I don't think that's what they're trying to say, is it? They're not trying to fix the problem. They're trying to weaponize it and exploit these senseless deaths. 3 9-year-olds who were brutally murdered just for their own bottom line in the ballot box. It's disgusting. It's hypocritical. And by the way, as a Christian, I find it offensive that they would leverage Christ's teachings in such a heinous way against innocent people.
You know, Jim Wallace, I'm so glad that you were available to talk today, because there is this thing that's happening where it's kind of hard to avoid the sort of Christian element to it. There is a moral panic over LGBTQ folks in general, but trans folks in particular. Do you have any idea where that is coming from?
LGBTQ are initials that all stand for somebody who's beloved of God, made in the image of God. Let's be clear about that. This is all a distraction from hate. That's what we're using this for, distraction. Here's a moral fact. The leading cause of death now for our children and teenagers are guns. Leading cause. And here's a moral conclusion from that moral fact. We're not protecting our children. That's right. If it were websites or poison food or some website, we would take care of it. Yeah. But a Republican says, there's nothing we can do. This is needed for our freedom. So what he's saying there is we will sacrifice our children for the sake of what he calls freedom. So let's ask, what kind of freedom is this? Yeah. For whom? From whom? This is a question he has to ask. You said worship in your opening segment there. There was an ancient god called Moloch. Leviticus talks about Moloch, who was a god that children were sacrificed to in flames. And the Bible is very tough on Moloch. Guns are our new Moloch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Guns are the
That is just...
What? Yeah, tell me your thoughts on that. That whole fiasco that was
my
like
gosh.
just shown on...
Okay, so it's interesting because, of course, like as we're going over this, like just I believe it was yesterday, Tennessee passed a bill saying that all schools have to have security guards, which I think is, of course, a great idea. It's going to increase security. And, of course, we saw, at least there is some inklings, that the shooter decided not to go after a high school because there was too much security, quote unquote. And so what he's trying to say, it's like, oh, yes, like we're sacrificing children on the altar of guns. And it's like, well, you're seeing guns as the primary problem. Yeah. And it's like, we've had guns that have been around, like the guns that they always try and point to, the guns which they always try and attack are the AR-15s. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst gun ever. AR-15s have been around since the 50s. The amounts of shootings, at least large number of victims in terms of wounded or dead, have gone up since the 50s, whereas access has become more difficult. And the reason that has nothing to do with access to guns or whether they see guns as like this end all be all. It is because the moral state of our society has fallen exceptionally far. And instead of standing and exposing darkness and saying, no, like this is what we're standing for, and this is what we're standing against, and we want to have moral principles and moral foundations that our churches and our schools and our businesses and our governments are based upon, we're going to say, nope, we have to take all that out. We have to take religion and completely separate it from all aspects of public life and make religion entirely a private issue. And we are going to make it so that the individual is the highest God. And guess what? If you make the individual the highest priority in life, then anytime that individual is slighted, then they will see everyone else as beneath them. And if you see everyone else as beneath you, then killing them is not a big deal. And like the other thing, of course, we have to mention, and we talked about this during the Nashville shooting coverage on Tuesday, is that when you label everyone your enemy, then killing them just becomes a no-brainer. It's like, well, why wouldn't I kill them? If they're my enemy, if they're trying to kill people like me, trying to kill people like my friends, then it makes sense that I would kill them. I'm doing a moral good. So,
yeah, I think that I think this okay. So Joy Reid is somebody should make up a university course, entitle it "How to Lie in the Media" and use nothing but clips from Joy Reid, because that entire clip is an entire clinic in how do you lie convincingly to the regular public. She started the whole segment by giving you all these statistics. By the way, those statistics are cherry picked and totally purposely chosen to portray all these ridiculous stats. Okay, then she goes to that gentleman in that ponytail, and she basically tries to imply that oh, here's an expert. He's our resident Christian and all that. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that guy basically what he does, his shtick is to try to turn the tables. He is the most perfect example of Darvo. How do you use Darvo? Darvo is deny, attack, reverse the roles of offender and victim. Okay, sorry, a victim of an offender. That is a manipulation tactic used by abusers. That's what he does. That every time I've seen him, that is exactly what he does. First, he denies that trans people are in any way kind of dangerous to children at all. That is just not true. We've covered this on numerous occasions. That is just simply not true. Okay. Secondly, he tries to reverse the roles and say, well, actually, trans people are not responsible for a lot of shootings. Well, of course not. Nobody says that they are, because they are a tiny proportion of the general public. But trans people are so far out of the norm statistically in terms of violence against anyone that they disagree with. It is incredible how willing the people in the transgender, and particularly the really rabid transgender activists, how willing they are to resort to violence. And I've seen
it's like every
more
single
examples.
It's almost every single time where we see a gathering of the more activist side of transgenderism, you will see violence erupt, and it's always from the more radical transgender activists to someone else, and typically a Christian who's just standing there trying to make some sort of argument.
They're violent, they're angry, they shout and they scream at you, and they do things, and they're willing to do anything that they can get away with. It's quite surprising and all that. But finally, the guy's comments on okay, by the way, that transgender gentleman with the ponytail, I remember I heard from some commentator, they were saying that before they became transgender, they were a feminist kind of spokesperson, and apparently they were so rude and cruel, and they actually got canceled by the feminist community because of his behavior. His behavior was so awful that he basically got canceled for several years. Suddenly he comes back as a transgender woman, and all of a sudden,
all is forgiven.
all is forgiven. He is now on top of the pecking order again, and now he's basically popular because he's useful to the cult. That's why he's there. But that minister, the supposed minister, he basically said that the conservatives are the new Molech, and he basically makes an incredibly stupid argument. He says that because they're not willing to give us what our demands, which is we demand that we ban all guns. That's the demand. Because they're not willing to give us that demand, because they might have reasonable, rational reasons for not doing these crazy policies that you're advocating for, which would not actually solve the problem, but would only make things 10 times worse. Oh, they want dead children, right? That is his logic. Whereas he supports an actual political position that says we can kill children all the way up till 9 months with impunity. He himself would, I guarantee you, he supports abortion on demand all the way up to 9 months. If there's anybody who supports the idea that of Molech, and if the Molech actually applies to somebody, it is to him and to the people around him in that entire little group. They all probably support child sacrifice.
Mhm.
So all of this can be shown to be these people operate in a vacuum. They never face opposition. Everyone just kind of nods their heads and says like, yeah, oh, absolutely, yep, absolutely. The other side is totally evil. The other side is corrupt. They're wicked. This is what Dennis Prager always says, that if you're on the right, you believe that the other side is just incorrect. If you're on the left, you believe that the other side is evil. And that's the crucial difference between people on the right and left of the politics in our country. And I hate to say it, I've lived this out. This is very much the case.
Yeah, and it's like people on the right are starting to be like, yes, like those that are on the political left, they're no longer just wrong.
Yeah.
Like they're starting to make distinctions. Yeah. It's like, well, there's the people that don't know any better, which there are many people on the left that do not know any better, unfortunately. Yeah. But then there are those on the left that know what they're doing, that know what they're calling for, and there's nothing else that can be said except to call them willingly and deliberately evil.
Yeah. It's because of their conduct.
Yes.
Because initially, people on the right were like, well, I think your ideas are wrong. But we've seen the conduct of people on the left is so heinous, like really, really evil conduct, that you're no longer we're judging them based on their conduct. These are people who are willing to get violent. These are people who are willing to beat innocent people in the streets. These are people who are willing to do all this evil stuff. So the conduct of people on the really, really far left is very, very dangerous and very troublesome. This is why they're no longer just bad ideas; they're dangerous ideas because they're encouraging people to commit violence. This is called praxis. In Marxist theory, praxis means you can't just say you want something. You have to fight for it. You have to practice it. That's praxis. Go for it. Yeah, next one. So these are the same people that argue for this are the same people that argue for vaccines for kids.
Yep.
And
now the WHO recommends that healthy young people not get the COVID vaccines. So the revisions and guidelines were put out this week by the WHO Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, a group of scientists and officials, which said they no longer recommend the COVID vaccine for healthy children ages 6 months to 17 years. Quote, the public health impact of vaccinating healthy children and adolescents is comparatively much lower than the established benefits of traditional essential vaccines for children, such as the rotavirus, measles, and pneumococcal conjugate vaccines, Sage wrote. So we have been saying this for a long time. We've been requesting that this policy or something similar to that come into place, just because we've said for ages, at the very least,
now.
There's no reason for children to be taking this.
Yeah. But our public health officials and everyone else in the media were shouting that, we have to
everyone
force
had to be compliant.
And even kids who are too young to consent. No. They can consent. You don't need their parents' permission and all that. Yeah. You see the parallels here, right? With COVID, like a 6-year-old kid can consent to having a vaccine. and with the new activism targeted at children. Oh, a 6-year-old can consent. We don't need their parents' permission. We can basically kidnap them. When I say kidnap, I legitimately mean kidnap with the assistance and power of the government, because that's what a lot of states and a lot of places in Canada are advocating. That if you are a parent and you don't go along with our efforts to basically turn your kid into a transgender, experiment, social experiment, then we can remove the child from your custody because we consider you to be an abusive parent. That's the mindset. So that's kidnapping, in my view.
Yep. Oh, I'm with you there. Yeah, just shift it a little bit. But moving on from that, to continue talking about the Nashville shooting. So Bill Maher has an interesting take. Calls for media blackout on school shooters. So a total media blackout on school shooters on Friday, stating the continual attention bestowed on the perpetrators of such crime may make the thought of committing such atrocities appealing to some people. So this is what he said.
So the other thing I'd like to say about this is the media anxiously waiting on all this information about the shooter. How about we have a blackout on the shooters and what they did? This is...
Because they feed off of each other.
Yesterday was the opening of the baseball season. Now, in baseball, when somebody runs on the field, the camera doesn't show it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give that person any publicity. Why can't we at least do that in this country? I don't want to hear anything about it. We know it happened. I don't want to know what orientation this person is, how old they are, what their manifesto said. I don't give a shit about any of it because it's just going to inspire the next one.
Copycats.
And I understand. If the only problem is that I'm gonna have to look for this, but I'm fairly certain that Bill Maher, when there was a white supremacist shooter, that he made different claims.
Okay, what do you say?
Based
on your recollection, you might be wrong, but
I might be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that he had mentioned to be we're glad that we're exposing these racists.
Yeah, I personally think that the best. Okay, so I think Daily Wire does it the best. What they do at Daily Wire, and I think some other places do. They have a policy that they do not name the killer. Okay, and they don't show pictures of the killer. And the reason for this is because they don't want to give the killer any celebrity. They don't want to encourage mass shooters to get the notoriety of your name is on the nightly news and all. I like that because it on one side they get it right in the sense that this person doesn't get that notoriety that they want. However, on the other side, as Latimer Crowder has shown in various times that they've done a great job of doing this in a lot of shootings. The media has a tendency to lie about people and use the anonymity of certain people in order to obscure the facts. Like, for example, when certain mass shooters did their sprees, one thing that they absolutely tried to avoid, and they went out of their way to do it, is they avoided giving the person a name, or giving the person's name and giving the person's ethnicity, and they did it on purpose. And he was pointing out that they're saying oh, this person is Asian. It's yeah, they're Asian in the fact that they're from the Middle East. It was very obvious that they're trying to, they're basically lying in order to try to make people believe oh, this has nothing to do with Islamic terror or something like that, which is something that they would always do. Sometimes they would even try to obfuscate and say oh, this person is they try to pretend this was a gun issue, but they obscure the fact that this was done by an African American shooter or something like that. They do this all the time. So I'm kind of torn. On the one hand, I feel like the media can't be trusted to tell us the truth and the facts, which is why I'm kind of a little leery about that.
Well, here's something similar that he said. So 2015, he said he blames right-wing media for Charleston. They present a really twisted view.
Mm-hmm.
And he slammed the right wing for influencing the warped worldview of Dylan Roof, the terrorist who shot 9 African Americans to death in a historic black church in Charleston, in order to start a race war.
I may have heard about that way back.
Mm-hmm.
Was the white killer? This is the white killer?
Yeah, it was.
That's the guy that shot up his church.
That.
Yeah, I remember this one.
That guy.
Yeah,
that guy.
This guy. Yeah, he's a great example of a white supremacist kind
of an actual white supremacist. And Tucker Carlson's like, well, we know his motives, and
he wanted to
conservatives are to blame. And
course.
it's like, okay, so you're calling for it in one circumstance, but when it comes to a transgender shooter who's clearly doing it to target Christians, and it's like media blackout. We can't talk about that. Can't talk about that.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're going to you're not even pretending to be unbiased. Like, if you're going to have a conversation about a media blackout or something about if we're not going to bring up the manifestos of these individuals, then you can't bring up the manifestos of all of them. Now, I'm fine with, of course, going with a route similar to the Daily Wire, where it's like we have to be aware of all of their manifestos, of all of their rationales, because we have to be aware of what is actually influencing people to commit these evil acts. And that's why I actually, when it comes to the manifesto for this individual, we already know essentially what it's supposed to say. We don't know what it's going to say when the FBI release it.
No, by the way, I think I saw an article that they actually, the police basically confirmed that, yeah, it was trans related.
Oh, of course.
I'd have to confirm, but I saw that in one of the stories I was looking at today.
But of course, this is all about hiding the real motives. And like we were talking about on Tuesday, if you incite the forms of tribalism that we see now in Canada and the United States, then it is inevitable that violence will occur. And if you say this group is responsible for all of the suffering and the death and the pain that you suffer and that you undergo on a daily basis, then of course they're going to take it out on that group.
Yeah, and I think this story and the previous story, just for kind of a quick overview, they show two problems. One, in the previous story with the Molech and kind of fake pastors and all that, in their view, it's all about finger pointing. It's always the other side's fault. You saw how they portrayed it. It's their fault. Everything is their fault. Every single thing is their fault. Nothing is our fault. And then with Bill Maher, it's okay. He's presenting a solution, but the solution is not actually as effective or clear, cut and dry as they'd like to think. And this is one of the problems that we have in our modern day, conversations, is that too often people on the left, their solutions are not actually solutions. They put out a fire by creating new fires.
Yeah,
what they do, and that is why we can't get anything done. Why things are getting worse, because it's just a lot of shouting and not a lot of effective solutions. We're not actually problem solving. We're everyone's problem creating, and unfortunately, right now.
Well, we are seeing in some states in the United States, they have been moving away from, okay, we just need to talk about such things and be like, no, we actually need to address, we need to solve them.
We have to actually stop.
We've seen stuff like the Millstone Act. We've seen stuff of course, they just passed in Tennessee that you have to have security guards at every school. These are policies and these are principles that will save lives and that will prevent children from being used and abused. Yeah. And I'm very glad this is what the Republican Party is moving. Now, of course, here in Canada, we're doing the opposite. The Conservatives, they had the Trans Day of Visibility, and you had a good chunk of Conservatives here in Canada that were like, oh yes, we have to be mindful of people's preferred pronouns and
because
what they identify as.
We don't have the same name in Canada that they have in the States. In the States, Republicans that are pretend to be conservatives they have a name for them called rhinos. Republicans in name only, right? We don't have that in Canada, and there are unfortunately a ton of quote-unquote rhinos here in Canada.
The only way that we actually refer to people like that is because, of course, in Canada, the primary left-wing party is the Liberals, and so any conservative that doesn't actually embody conservative principles, we just call them liberal lights. Because that's exactly what they are.
It's not even that helpful.
It's not
even that helpful. Because it's not that they're liberal light in the sense that they're, that they appear to be leftist, but it's they don't even seem to hold conservative values. In your area, Michelle Rempel Warner, she is as left wing as they come. I mean, I don't know much about her that's conservative, except the fact that she just opposes
oil and gas.
Like, you know,
that's the only conservative aspect about her.
I guess so, because she's in Alberta. You have to win that way, right?
No.
So yeah, so yeah. Ultimately, thankfully, there's a lot of people who are doing some great stuff in the States. Canada's definitely far behind, but here's a good example right now. This next story of the left wing. What they like to do is it's all about narrative. It's all about image. This is an image war. And one of the things that they've done is, obviously, in the wake of the shooting, there was a lot of talk about the special day. I'm not going to say it because issues about that specific phrasing.
Yeah.
But that day was notorious, like the worst time possible to kind of do that. By the way, did you know that the word vengeance? People speculated like, oh, they're going to change the definition of vengeance in the Merriam-Webster because the definition had the word violence in it. And apparently I heard that they actually did change it, which I was like, of course they did, because they have to cover for their liberal elites and all that kind of stuff. I was like, of course they had to change the definition. Oh my gosh. But yeah, go into the story, man.
So yeah, the Trans Radical Activist Network said they have canceled the demonstration. It was set to be held outside the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. was due to be held on Saturday, but organizers of the event said Thursday that threats on social media had led them to make the decision to cancel the event. And the event comes after the Nashville shooting. The event initially caused outrage on social media as Twitter removed thousands of tweets promoting and criticizing the events, as they said vengeance does not imply peaceful protest. So this is their post saying this action is not happening due to credible threat of life and safety. Well, yeah, except the credible threat to life and safety is not to the trans people.
Yeah, the most troubling thing about what happened last week, the shooting, is that you saw the media in real time really like that they showed their true colors in a way I've never seen before. It was quite amazing to see. What they did is, and like, okay, so let me put it in a really simple way. They were faced with a real conundrum. Okay, the transgender community, people in the transgender community, are the victims. Okay, if you look at Marxist theology or Marxist like thinking, a victim can never be the oppressor.
Villain.
They can never be the victimizer. Okay, they never. And so they were stuck because, okay, it's undeniable this person is a trans person. Okay, but this trans person did horrible things. They literally murdered with no justification. There's no way to justify what they did, but they murdered people. Okay, now for a common sense, rational person, that would be they are a victimizer. They victimize people. But unfortunately, the rules of the game, the rules on the left, because the left operates not from a traditional Western liberal mindset, but from a Marxist mindset, which basically the rules are a victim can never, ever be a victimizer. And so they could not ever break the rules. They can't say that this person is a victimizer. So how did they solve it? And what was the narrative that they had to go with? The narrative was the same narrative that they used back in 9/11. Remember, 9/11, there was like the attack on the two towers and several other targets. At that point, the victims, the high victim group was people like who were Muslim, the Islam, right? And so they basically attacked and murdered 3,000 people, or like way more than 3,000, but a lot of people. They could not allow themselves, and they could not allow them to be seen as the victimizers. And so what did they do? They came up with a strategy where they basically say, well, now we have to worry about the backlash. That's the thing. The word backlash against the Muslim community. And that was the thing. That was the gaslight. It's like, no, they're not like, they're not victimizers. They're victims, because look at how we've treated them and how we've mistreated the Islamic community for so many years all over the world. America is the bad guys. We drove them to do these terrible things, and now innocent people, innocent Muslims are now going to suffer. That's the exact same thing that they're doing with the Nashville shooter, and it shows that these people are not driven by a moral compass. They're driven by protecting it's whatever helps the revolution succeed is good. That's how they define good. Good is anything that helps the revolution proceed and move forward. And that's why in this case, that's how they justify to themselves that, oh, it's good for us to justify the murder of kids and the murder of teachers, but by basically never throwing anybody in the special in club under the bus. We can never do that. Hence why the White House and Karine Jean-Pierre, the world's worst press secretary, she can come out and say well, we want our hearts go out not to the Christian parents or the children that died, but to the trans community that is now so suffering and really in pain and all that. Even though they basically, these are the people that advocate for violence, and many of them did in the wake of that.
Okay, so we are going to be trying to moving a little bit faster because it's already 10 p.m. Okay. So thousands of complaints filed after trans YouTuber allowed to play on Women's Football League reportedly injured players.
Oh, yeah.
So in Australia, Amateur Football League is receiving backlash from parents and players who are voicing frustrations after learning that a man who identifies as a woman has been dominating the female soccer league and injuring female players. Football New South Wales League One reportedly has 5 trans-identified male players. One player in particular has led the first-grade goal kickers table with 7 goals. Initial reports from the Daily Mail Australia has chosen not to identify the player, censoring images of him and declining to provide his name. However, Redux can confirm the player is a trans activist YouTuber, Riley J. Dennis. It's been alleged that Dennis, 30-year pro league players for the Inter Lions FC, injured women from the opposing side in a match last weekend. Reports that a female player had to seek hospital attention as a result of her injuries are as yet unconfirmed. But that's still crazy that that's the kind of damage that this person is putting on women. And this is, of course, just a continuation of everything we've been hearing so far. And then if you've been paying attention at all, there's new trans people that come out every day. There was, of course, some reports in some Libs of TikTok videos in which you had teachers saying that, oh, I had 5 students in my class came out as trans. It's well, that's unheard of, which is why it's basically physically impossible. But this all goes towards showing support for this idea that a social contagion theory for certain teen girls identifying as transgender is probably the most likely conclusion, the most likely outcome. New study examining the recent epidemic of teenagers and young adults identifying as trans has been published, and the findings strongly indicate that social contagion is a factor in this new phenomenon. The study by doctors Michael J. Bailey and Susanna Diaz, published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, examined a survey of 1,655 parent reports to further investigate the rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis first put forward by Dr. Lisa Littman in 2018. Activists at the time accused Littman of transphobia and claimed her study was invalid, but evidence to support her hypothesis has only grown in the intervening years, and the latest study indicates that, at least for some, ROGD is a disturbing reality.
Yeah, here's some interesting numbers that they put in this article. Apparently, the rapid onset dysphoria affects females, 75% of females versus 25% of males.
Yep.
So that's one big thing. If you've studied transgenderism in any detail, you know that historically, transgenderism primarily was primarily a male. Affected males, not women. This is a complete flip of the script, because just like anorexia and bulimia are overwhelmingly females are the ones who suffer from it. In this case, gender dysphoria was always males, but now it's affecting females far more, which is odd because that's not how this mental illness happened before. Another issue that they brought up here, 55% of parents responded yes when asked if their child had friends who came out as transgender at the same time, and that the response was significantly higher for natal females than in natal males. So, in other words, parents who were asked about this, they've noticed that if your child came out as transgender, the chances that they had transgender friends was massive. In other words, the social contagion theory is very strong, and critically speaking, it's not hard to make a case for it, because this bucks the normal trends of this thing, and it's better fit by social contagion theory. So just keep this in mind.
Yep. Alrighty, continuing on from there, we're going to talk about an incident that happened over this past weekend to an individual in Vancouver by the name of Billboard Chris.
Oh my
and yeah, the video is self-explanatory, and anyone who is not horrified by this is, I don't know what you're doing. So we're going to mostly skip over the Sky News reporting, but they do have two different angles of this, so it's important to showcase all angles.
All right, go for it. So this happened in Vancouver, right?
So it's cowardice, buddy, all around.
Now, here's another angle of that attack, and look at how many police are there witnessing Chris being menaced and then assaulted.
People probably want. How do you keep your?
What?
How do you keep composure?
Nothing.
Hey! Okay. They just violently assaulted. My phone, my card.
Unbelievable.
And let's hear from one of those officers who allowed that to happen.
Hey, did you just say he came here to incite violence by forcing his opinion on people?
Yes.
You think he came here to incite violence because they got offended by his sign?
When you
What
talk
is
to
wrong
someone
with you?
and scream at someone and
He
put
didn't
your
scream
face...
at all.
Yes,
he
he
didn't.
did.
They put their face in his face.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So are you saying the guy who...
How on earth did you become a police officer?
Self-defense?
She is literally sitting here saying that Billboard Chris is inciting violence by standing there with his sign. Is that really your position?
By the way, that woman was not like way off in the distance. There's actual videos where people have highlighted. She was literally standing there
she was
watching
right
the
there.
entire thing. She was not like, oh, I didn't see it or something like that. She was
Yeah.
not speaking from ignorance. She knew what happened.
Yep.
And she was happy about it. What are your thoughts,
Well,
Steven?
and like this is very common. Like we saw this unfortunately from members of the Calgary police, that these individuals, they know what happens, they've seen what happens, and they see violence take place, and they're like, good, because well, unfortunately, the Vancouver police and the Calgary police, they have people volunteer. And the cops that volunteer for these missions, it seems to be some like unspoken rule that'd be like, oh yeah, like if violence is committed by the transgenders, then that's totally fine. Look the other way, like excuse it, deny, be like, oh, like they were committing like screaming and intimidation and incitement and threats and hate speech. It's like, well, no, he literally was in the middle of an interview asking how he keeps his composure, and he's like filming
Standing
all
perfectly
around.
still. Standing perfectly
And then
still.
eventually, like, he does grab the person right before he gets, like, Billboard Chris grabs the other person because the other person
he
makes.
doesn't grab them.
He does.
He like didn't he just kind of nudge him with his hand or something like that?
I'll show you the exact moment. It's like he grabs the other person's shirt because the other person's making contact with his chest.
Okay. Like pushes him away?
Well, he doesn't have time to do anything like that. So, like, you can see that he was making contact with his chest to his elbow.
With his elbow. Yeah, because the guy's like literally on his face.
Yeah, and so Billboard Chris like turns around. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna like lightly push you off," and then the other person like goes full out and attacks him.
Look, it's hard to see from that angle because all I see.
Well, this is a better angle than the other one, though.
No, but like here, you don't actually see him grabbing. You see him like that's his hand
only
right there.
it's only for a second.
That's his elbow.
You can see his hand clench.
Clench what? He's holding a microphone.
No, he switches hands.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so
So it's going to be this right hand, and it's going to be this little pink area right here.
Okay.
It's like for half. I'll see if I can slow it down.
Now, here's another angle
hard
of
to-
that
hard to see.
attack, and look at how many police.
I always love slowing stuff
are
down. It's
there
hilarious.
Witnessing.
Okay. Elbow.
Switches hands.
Switches hand.
Grabs.
Okay, I saw
It's
like
for
a
half a
handful.
second.
It looks like a hand, like he's like trying to push him off. I don't know about grab, but maybe like almost like pushing somebody off was right
Like
on him.
it was, clearly like someone
it's not
like
a
there was
clear
already
grab.
there was already
I see the hand-
contact.
I see the hand in the vicinity.
It was more,
But
and it wasn't like grabbing their body. It was like grabbing their clothing.
But at the same time, like what I'm saying is that from that angle, from what I saw,
Yeah.
yes, I could see the hand in the area. I could see maybe his hand,
But it's
in,
certainly-
like, a
yeah,
move.
no.
But I don't know about a grab. Like when you say grab, like I'm in my head.
Oh,
I'm thinking,
grab is a
okay,
very
somebody
specific-
grab
yeah.
like this or something like that, right?
Mhm.
But I
Whereas
see,
this
like,
one's more like I'm grabbing onto my shirt, but I'm not like I'm just like grabbing a bit of extra fiber. I'm not
Well,
like grabbing and pulling it.
I see it more like if you put someone, like let's say someone's in my face, I put my hand to push them away.
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of like,
that's
"Oh,
what
give
it
me some
was,
space."
and then the other person,
That's what it looks like.
the other person took that as a reaction.
Yeah.
And was like, "Oh, like this is my cue. This is anything that I do is self-defense."
By the way, by the way, I want to really point this out because I always try to expose this. That is called mid-level violence.
Yes.
That is what that is. Everyone needs to understand how this works. It's very simple. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. That's the tactic. Okay.
Yeah.
What they do is they literally get as close to you. They'll scream. They'll shout. They'll get very confrontational. They'll get right in your face and all that. The whole idea is that they want you to make the first move of any kind,
and so they can take any action in response.
Then they can take any actions out of response and turn you into the aggressor, and they can still be the victim. This is what they do. By the way, everything that they're doing is absolutely harassment and absolutely verbal assault and that.
Oh yeah,
they're already breaking actual laws. By literally standing in front of people, shouting at them, putting right in their face. All of that is already chargeable.
Clearly intimidation.
Clearly intimidation. Everything that our mayor here in Calgary says that people in the conservative side are doing.
Yeah,
is what they're doing.
Well,
Exactly
and
what
this
they
is
do.
actually a good comparison because this is the level of intimidation that the trans community in Vancouver is allowed to get away with, including violence. And then this is what is considered some form of intimidation, but in Calgary when it comes to pastors.
Yes.
So this is a video of Pastor Derek being arrested again, and you can't even see anything. The reported people that he is harassing and intimidating, they're not even visible.
They're not even in the
What are
vicinity.
you guys doing? Get your gloves off. What are you doing? He's so far away. He's so far away. What are you guys doing? You guys are psychos. You guys are Freemason, Illuminati, psychos. He's beyond 200 meters away. Blake.
I'll send a warrant.
Yeah, blah, blah.
Take care of my equipment, bro.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Unbelievable. You guys need to repent. All you CPS. A warrant. You big babies. Working for psycho Satanists. Jesus is Lord. Died for your sins.
You want to take this phone?
Well, absolutely. What do you want me to do? Throw it in the garbage?
No.
Give it to me.
You want your phone when you get out?
Give it to me. You're so disappointing. This city is going to be destroyed by God's wrath. This is the last call. This is the last call. Oh, you're checking him. Oh, does he have weapons? He has a Bible. He has a Bible. Going to jail for what? Oh, we can't tell you. Unbelievable.
I know.
Such a joke, bro.
I got
hardly see the sign of the Genesis Center. Which condition? Someone put out a warrant? What condition? That's the warrant. So it's not for breaching today. Okay. It's for a warrant that's going to put out for your. What condition did I breach? Can you just back off, please? Yeah. Can you actually hold that, please?
Put it on the phone.
Arresting me on a condition I breached.
Put it on the phone. Put it on the phone. I don't know if I should say you're welcome anymore. Are you my friends?
Saying what condition did I breach?
Right,
what
right.
Condition? Tell us, officers.
Yeah.
What condition is it? See, they don't tell us. Why are they arresting me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a joke. It's
well,
it would be funny if it wasn't so serious.
Yeah.
Like, because this is the third time that Derek has been arrested, and then he's like, okay, like what bail conditions did I breach? Like the other ones, it was like, okay, like the bail conditions were brutal anyway. They were stupid. He would be breaching his bail conditions by going to Superstore. The new bail conditions are like they weren't even jailable offenses; they were fines. And now it's like, oh, you're breaching bail conditions, and it's like, well, he's clearly 500 meters away. Like you can't even see it in that video.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I know where that intersection is. It's at least 500 meters to the library. He's the only person there because there's a protest that's closer that he can't be involved in because of these nonsensical bail conditions. And they're just arresting him because Gondek doesn't want him to continue standing against her. Like we had an initial interview when we did when we went to the Rec Room drag show.
Yep.
And we interviewed people there. And when we interviewed people there, we asked them a very simple question. It's like, what if you were to talk to Gondek, what would you say? And it's like, you can't stop us. That's like that. We need more people who are willing to say, yeah, like we know that the Calgary police, we know that the city of Calgary is against us. This is an unfortunate reality of being a Christian.
Yeah.
The world is not out in your favor. They are going to be against you. They are going to hate you for what you believe. Now, we're not trying to, like, Derek is not trying to be like, oh, you're all evil and you're all condemned to hell. No.
Well, to be fair, like, the guy who's speaking is speaking pretty harshly.
Oh, the guy
to be fair, here, I want to make sure to couch this properly. He's has every right to be angry.
Yes.
Because he's not dealing with people. He's not dealing with law enforcement that's acting in good faith. He's not.
No.
I can guarantee you. I mean, I guarantee you, I could probably talk to these officers if they were honest and actually talking to me, and they would probably be like, yeah, we just have to do it because we were told to. But they probably like this is all the way through COVID. We knew that the officers did whatever they were told. There was never any
there was never any doubt. There was never any question.
It's always, I'm just following orders.
Well, and even when we were talking about the cops that weren't involved, like the cops that were walking alongside at the freedom rallies, and we would talk to them, and they were usually very nice. And we're like, okay, like, do you have anything to say about like the incident of the cops like attacking that kid on the ice? Oh, we can't talk about that because that's an incident with another Calgary police service member. And it's like, see, if you're unwilling to say there are good cops and bad cops, and that incident was an incident with bad cops, then you're just playing cover for them. And it's like, we get it. You're probably one of the better ones. But if you're willing to hide and you're willing to conceal the fact that there are bad cops because they're like, well, we're all one organization, we're a big team. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You're not a big team because we know that there are certain members that oppose this stuff, but they're unwilling, or they're unwilling to take a stand against it. Or they have the misguided, and I'm sorry if my detective is watching this. Hello. The Calgary Police Service is not unbiased, but you can't keep going. Not. They're not.
Critically thinking, critically examining the evidence over the last 3 years, the Calgary Police Service does not act in an unbiased manner. They don't. Now here's the point I want to make about that arrest. It's very important. People, and I encounter people like this all the time, and there's parallels between what is happening in the U.S. Obviously, what's happening to President Trump is much bigger. It's a much bigger scale. It's a much bigger exposure. It's much more of a worldwide news, and the importance is much bigger because that's for the presidential. But parallels are very close to what's happening here. This is like what's happening to Trump is a political persecution, political hit job. Yep. It's entirely political. And everybody who is an intelligent, like critical thinker knows that there's no validity to what they're doing. They know it. They know that this is completely political, and they're doing it anyways. What is happening here is incredibly the exact same thing. You see it, and you can examine it, because if you look at the judge's bail conditions, the bail conditions are not reasonable, nor are they rational. This is a judge. A judge is supposed to be logical, follow the law, and it's supposed to make things that make sense.
Yeah.
When you see the bail conditions they give, you can tell they are not rational or reasonable. They are entirely political. This is a politically motivated judge, whether he's doing it on his own volition or whether he's being pushed to do it by somebody else. We don't know. But the result of his decision is political. Then you look at the cops. The cops, when they arrested Derek last time, they arrested him in the parking lot. People asked him, "How is he breaking he's not have you measured how far it is?" The cops are like, "Oh no, we don't care." That is not officers acting in good faith.
That's not how justice works.
If you know the order was clear. It said, nope, you have to be within a certain range before it's illegal. Yeah. But they didn't act like that because they're not acting in good faith. They're not even giving people and whenever cops are asked about this, they don't have to justify their orders. They don't even have to justify the rules that they're breaking. They just say, go talk to PR. And by the way, when you hear cops say talk to PR, you know they do that not because that's what they think is best, but because they've been told to do that. Okay? We're not operating in a vacuum. If you take everything all together, you look at how Jody Gondek has acted, how she has very publicly made it obvious that this is a political thing, that she's got political enemies, that she's acting in absolutely obvious ways that the ways that she's acting, it's obvious that Derek is her enemy, and she wants to take him down because he's bringing exposure to the system, which is why she's targeting him. And we have seen that this is what they've done during the COVID lockdowns. They're just carrying on the exact same recipe every time. Politicians decide, they give secret orders, and then the entire system is rigged from top to bottom. Okay? So people believe, the regular everyday Albertans believe, that law and order still operates properly in our province. But they do not realize that law and order is being weaponized. And it's already being and I've seen it. I've lived it. I have met the people who have had the system weaponized against them. And the problem is that we're seeing it and it doesn't stop. It's still happening. It's getting worse. Yeah. Which is why we're concerned. Too many people believe the system still works, the system's still fair, and that it's being applied equally, but it's not.
No.
Derek Reimer is a perfect example of the canary in the
coal mine.
The canary in the coal mine. Thank you. He's the canary in the coal mine. He's proof positive that the system is still being weaponized against political opponents. We are no longer a country of justice. We're a country of laws, and the laws are applied based on who the political insiders decide they want to use them against.
Yep.
That's the way it works. Sorry,
so,
go ahead.
This is just a quick video from the Counter Signal. Jody Gondek humiliated after being asked about her to fund the police records. So this is, of course, I think this was today. Yeah, it was from today.
So I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Normally they obfuscate. They just
I was like, how is she going to answer this? So let's just watch. It's highly entertaining.
Did it take the random stabbings, wives getting stabbed, police officers getting killed to realize that it was important to fund police departments? And how can Calgarians trust you when you flip-flop on basic issues like public safety?
Just walks away. What the heck? What the heck?
Well, and what she did is basically the same as what Trudeau did when it came to the coalition. Well, yeah.
Worse. Trudeau actually gave a completely made-up answer.
He made a completely made-up answer, but essentially what they're doing
that was worse.
Is like, we're not going to allow any debate. We're not going to allow any discussion. Wow. We're not going to allow any critique of my policies or my agenda or my tactics. Like, we want these people to change their ways. Like, I wish like Jyoti would be like, yeah, like I made a mistake. Like my aggression against Christians and all this, like we want them to change, but the problem is that their actions are one way, and we are not going to back down even in the face of threats and assaults and jail time. Like that's something which we have to be considering that we might face for going up against evil will be potentially jail time. And guess what? We shouldn't be afraid of that. Like, yeah, it's foreboding. It's something that's like, ooh, I don't want to think about that. But if you go to jail because it's like, well, like Christ calls me to loves everybody, and then includes children that are being exploited. And I'm not going to do this in a violent way. I'm just going to stand up and I'm going to say no.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this, and I know, like, there's always there's always the idea that, like, oh, we have to say everything. I'm like, okay, I have read transcripts of people, particularly in the Roman Empire. I'll just use the Roman Empire as an example because, we talk about Christianity. Christianity grew up in a crucible of suffering by the government, right? There are so many amazing examples of Christian bishops or Christian pastors or Christian leaders who spoke directly to people in like political power, political positions that were killing Christians. And they were not like, like, you suck, you're the worst. They said, like, you're going to be held accountable by God for what you're doing. And what we are doing, none of us have done any evil. None of us have done anything wrong. What you're doing is perverting justice. And you're punishing people that are innocent for the crimes that are right. This is absolutely a valid and an absolutely right way to respond to people, particularly to government, people in political power who are doing evil. Okay? What Jyoti Gondik is doing is evil. She's twisting justice to punish Christian pastors, and she's using the power of the media to try to spin, make Derek out to be the worst person in society. Okay, all of this stuff is evil. Okay, she's lying about him. The media is lying about him. They're abusing the justice system, the legal system, in order to basically punish their political opponents. All of this is evil. All of it. Okay, you as a Christian, I would say, a nice Christian would be like, oh, I'm not going to say anything negative. A good Christian, which is what we're supposed to be, would say, this is wrong. What she's doing is evil, and we should not support it, nor should we be quiet in the face of injustice. Right? And there's a proverb that talks about that. Don't be silent when people are being dragged away, by bloodthirsty people. Right? So I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying what she's doing is wrong, what she's doing is evil, and this needs to stop. Nothing wrong with that as a Christian.
100%. So that's where we're going to end today's show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're following us on our video platforms, which is YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble, then of course, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're following us on YouTube, like, eventually we know that YouTube is going to be coming for all conservative channels because they do not want the conservative point of view to reign or even be spoken. So check us out on BitChute or Rumble because those platforms are much less likely to get rid of us, and we can say a lot more of what we want instead of kind of teetering around the YouTube rules. If you're following us on our text platforms such as Gitter, Twitter, Parler, and Facebook, and of course at theshrewddudes.com, then like, share, send us an email, send us a message. I'll try and respond as fast as I can to anything any questions or commentary that you may have. That being said, here at the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we'd like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd? We will see you on Thursday for our regularly scheduled Thursday live stream. Until then, have a great few nights, and as always, God bless.
Good night, everybody.